Welcome to another episode of Full Circle Podcast. As always, it's your favorite brother, Joseph. Listen, I want to just say first and foremost, I am so sorry that we did not have an episode for you on Wednesday. There was so much going on. We got our time a little bit mixed up with the studio to be able to record for you. And so, I'll be the first one to say I will own that. My bad on that, you guys. But this episode is dated Friday, which is today, and I'm recording this, and we're going to get this out here ASAP for y'all to be able to listen to make up for the couple of days that you may have been listening. I also want to say, listen, I appreciate the love that I have been receiving from all over, literally the world. There are people, they are coming to me, they're saying, Sir, we love that you reached out to us. Thank you so much, sir. We came with tears in our eyes. You get the point, right? But people have been reaching out to me. I'm very thankful. We got people listening in Spain. We have people that are listening in Egypt. That's wild. Thank you so much for taking your time. I know you're in a completely different time zone than we are over here. We got people listening in South America to our podcast as well. So listen, wherever you are in the world, wherever you are in America, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Listen, y'all, the NBA playoffs are here. We're going to talk a little bit about that today in this very brief episode. And then I also, for a brief second, want to just pivot a little bit and talk about what's been going on with the Supreme Court and their ruling about this man who was deported. One out of many of the people that were wrongfully deported, and one of this gentleman's name is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, why that is important overall in terms of our rights here as Americans and due process. And we're going to just jump into that right away. Okay, so before I get into that, if you have not subscribed to this podcast, what are you even doing at this point? I don't even know what you're doing, okay? You're listening. Leave us a comment. Leave us a review and subscribe, okay? Share this with a friend. As I always say, it is free to support a nigga unless you want to do more. So get on that, right? Okay, so let's just jump into things very, very quickly. I want to just talk about this really quickly. We're going to go from court to court right over here. And obviously in this particular situation, the stakes are not banners and NBA championship rings. This has to do with lives, legal rights, and of course, constitutional law and due process. And so this is the case I want to talk to you about that should have every U.S. citizen alarmed, every person that is seeking citizenship on their way to citizenship, and that is the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Now, to give a little background on this, Kilmar, he left El Salvador at age 16, and he was escaping gang violence, right? I did an episode on immigration. Please go ahead and listen to that because that will give you a lot more detail about what that looks like. It's called Welcome to America with a question mark because it don't really feel welcome. But on that episode, we lay out some of the forms of immigration that people are seeking. And Kilmar was one of the people that actually was here in the United States seeking asylum to escape gang violence. Well, in 2019, still during the first Trump administration, a judge ruled that he qualified for what they call withholding of removal, which illegally will block the United States from deporting him because he is still seeking asylum, which, by the way, if you are seeking asylum in the United States, you are still legally protected, okay? He was living in Maryland. He is a father, right? He has a whole family situation set up there. In literally last month, March of 2025, the Trump administration has, by all sort of legal means, which the Supreme Court upheld to some people's dismay, the Trump administration is using the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Can we just stop for a second and just get inside of our brain the justification of a law that was used back when this country only had 13 colonies? Can we just understand how crazy that is right now, when slavery was still legal, all right, when people were still using leeches to deal with sicknesses, all right, that is the law that they have decided to use, and they are labeling the gang that they claimed he was a part of, which is MS-13, as being a foreign terrorist organization. The problem with this is that they have deported this man without due process. And here's the thing, even if he was part of a gang, which they have not submitted any evidence of, even if he was part of a gang, he is still entitled to due process under the law. So this is an unconstitutional act that we're seeing here, and this follows a trend of the new Trump administration where they are casually just ignoring the law, ignoring court orders, one where I believe it was over 120 plus Venezuelans that were ordered to be returned to the United States because some of them were not, or they were not criminal. They did not have criminal status, and they were actually legally seeking or they were legally in the process of becoming citizens in the United States of America. Judge James Boasberg actually was the one that ordered the return back to the United States, in which the Trump administration has defiantly refused that. That is unconstitutional. I have to tell you, and I just want to say this for the record, I'm an independent, okay? I am neither a Democrat and I'm neither a Republican. There are some things that, some things rarely, but there are some things that are Republican that I am kind of with, and then there are some things that are more Democrat ideas that I tend to mostly side with. But I will say this, for the record, I believe that both parties have sold out. The Democrat and the Republican Party have sold out their constituency, their base. And there are people that will still go with them no matter what. The problem that I have here with this is that the Republican Party of today, and I mentioned this on previous episodes, but the Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party. It has been completely and totally hijacked by this cult movement that is MAGA. And if you are a Republican or a conservative, because this is not conservatism, if you are a conservative who even cares about the rule of law in America, you say you believe in the Constitution, you say you believe in 3 equal branches of government, the judicial, the executive, and the legislative, you cannot rightfully support what is happening right now. Because I look at all this with Republicans, typically they swear, by the Constitution, it must be by the Constitution. You want the Trump Bible, the beautiful Trump Bible with our Constitution. You want all of that, right? So when this very same person is violating the Constitution, you have to then ask yourself, are you a conservative or are you in a cult? Are you a believer in the Constitution and what it supplies, or have you gotten lost in the cult of personality and the cult of Trump, the movement of Make America Great Again? Because at the end of the day, if we are truly about being about the Constitution and what the founding fathers said and all this stuff, they would not support a president violating a legal order and then turning around just because he doesn't like it and saying, well, this person's a Democrat and this person's a Republican. At the end of the day, we are supposed to respect the law. We are supposed to respect the Constitution in America. And we're also supposed to respect what a judge says, even if it is in disagreement with your agenda, because that is called living in a democracy. And right now what we're seeing is shifts towards authoritarianism. Now, you can say whatever you want. I know there's people out there already listening to this, and they are going to say, oh, you're fear-mongering and all this other stuff. Okay, well, go do your research. Go do your homework. I can provide to you tons of examples where this has happened. But all you have to do is go read the Constitution. And we'll talk about habeas corpus in a second. But this is a violation of that. So using the Alien Enemies Act, designating them as a terrorist organization, they decided to deport this man. The Supreme Court unanimously ruled, this is where they completely agreed, that his deportation violated the law, and the Trump administration is still flouting this as a success, okay? Why that is a problem is because of the fact that they have already put out a ruling, even the conservative judges that he's placed on the courts, Trump himself, They have ordered the U.S. government to facilitate Abrego's return to the United States and restore his legal status. This was not a liberal ruling. This was not the radical left coming in and doing anything. This was actually a ruling across the board where they were unanimously in agreement. So the legal team, Trump's legal team, is now saying that the courts cannot interfere with foreign policy. At one point, Trump is out here being like, I'm going to stop the war that's going on in Ukraine on day one. I'm going to stop what's going on in Gaza. I'm all powerful. I can solve the problem on day one. But all of a sudden, he can't fix the foreign policy issue that his government facilitated, that our government facilitated to send this man over to El Salvador against an order, a court order. They're basically saying that they don't have to listen to the judiciary. And this is not the first time that this has happened. I'm going to do a full episode and a breakdown on this. But the reason why this is a problem is because the president of El Salvador came to the United States, President Nayib Bukele, and called Garcia a terrorist with no evidence. Carolyn Leavitt, the White House press secretary, has cited this man's name, Garcia's name, and at the same time, during a press briefing, cited another man who killed a woman. I believe her name was Rachel when she cited this. And this wasn't even related to Garcia's case, but she was using this as kind of an umbrella statement. This is a major problem. And it is time for us to recognize that if this is going to start with people that are non-citizens, but they're legally seeking asylum, and Trump has already said that he now wants to go after people that have been nationalized, right? He's talking about, we're going to send the criminals to El Salvador, which is part of his conversation. The question then becomes, at what point, and I know some of you might say this is a slippery slope argument, but at what point does this start coming down the tier? It seems like nothing is off limits over here. Right now, why this is problematic is because of the fact that because of habeas corpus, you have a right to challenge unlawful imprisonment in the United States. That is part of the Constitution. You have due process rights, no matter who you are in America. It is the guarantee that you get your day in court, no matter who you are or what you've been accused of, and that you have a right to, have all of those cases heard before a judge. And if the judge then determines that Garcia does not, he does not stand any chance based off of legal ruling to be here in the United States, then he can then be deported. That would be legal, and there's nothing wrong with that. But even if he was guilty, which he is not, he is still owed due process according to the law. And the concern with this is that if it can happen to him, it can happen to any one of us. If we start allowing our judicial system to be ignored, if we start allowing our Circuit Court of Appeals judges to be ignored, many of which are Republican as well, then our democracy and system of checks and balances will collapse. This is not about Democrat, Republican, right, left, radical right, whatever you want to call it. This is about the rule of law. And if the Constitution becomes optional and people decide in our government not to follow it, we are not in a democracy. We are in a fascist government. And we have to know that because that's not okay. So with that being said, I'll continue to monitor this. Of course, we'll talk about this a little bit later. I know that started off a little bit kind of weird, but listen, y'all, that's where we're at here in the United States of America. I never thought in all my years, with all the studies that I've done on political science and everything, that I would be able to, or that I would have to talk to you about something like this, that this would even be something on my radar, but this is where we're at. So yeah, keep an eye on that. Switching over here, I hate to go from court to the courts, or from the courts to the court, but I do want to talk about the NBA, and this is where you're going to see me smile a little bit, because now this is so exciting. Like, basketball for me is the most exciting thing. I live for this time of the year. Around this time of year, I love to get on the court, play with friends, play pickup ball, and of course, I'm watching the games, going to the events. The NBA playoffs have finally arrived, right? And what does that mean? Okay, I'm going to give you guys a couple of breakdowns right now. The play-in tournament that we saw over, I believe it was on Tuesday, the Warriors. Oh, my Lord, the Warriors. The Warriors completely defeated, not without a challenge, not without a fight, but the Warriors defeated the Grizzlies. It was an epic battle down to the wire. Of course, the Warriors, there were some flukes that happened during the game where they were up over 20 points, and then it ended up becoming a game where it went to 5 points, and then it was 1 point, and I'm sitting there with bated breath, just like so anxious, so nervous. I'm like, I hate when these guys do this. Every year, I feel like they give me a heart attack. Every single year, except when we're coasting, all right? And this year, there was no different, okay? But Steph Curry hit a couple of clutch threes at the end, still dealing with the hand injury. And, of course, what we ended up seeing, the Grizzlies were fighting hard. Desmond Bane was unstoppable, knocking down threes left and right. Ja Morant, even though he suffered an injury, he was still out there. He was putting up shots. So definitely got to give a shout-out to Ja Morant. I mean, I always get concerned for bro because I feel like dude is so explosive. He reminds me of Derrick Rose when Derrick Rose was playing, for the Bulls, and just the injuries that he got because of how explosive he was. And so my hope is that Ja Morant is able to find a way to balance that out so that he can have a long and sustained career because he is crazy awesome. Like, he is so good. And I think it's only a matter of time if the Grizzlies keep this team together that they will really take off and win a championship. So they did fire their coach, Taylor Jenkins, who really has been responsible for their success. We'll see what happens with that. But I just want to talk about matchups really quickly. So right now, we've got Lakers versus Timberwolves, okay? We've got legacy and youth on both sides of the spectrum, more so on the Lakers than we do the Timberwolves. But right now, of course, you have LeBron James and Luka Doncic right now. You've got LeBron James with this veteran IQ. Really, a lot of people are saying the best player to ever do it. I think LeBron it's so neck and neck. Like, the argument about LeBron being number 1 or number 2 to Jordan, every year he stays in the league, it's getting harder and harder to make that case. I'm not even going to go there because there's so many arguments that can be made about that. Who's the greatest versus who's the best. But at the end of the day, LeBron James is still a top 10 player in the league. He's a tough player with great basketball IQ, court vision. He can see things before they happen, driving all the way into the paint, using that strength and that power to get to the rim, as well as at times shooting from three. So we're going to be seeing that, as well as Luka Doncic's crafty movements, his patience, his ability to draw fouls and really, I mean, just light up the court. And they've got a great team with Austin Reeves and all those other guys that are performing out there. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. But we got to talk about Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is a force to be reckoned with. And, with Karl Anthony Towns going, to, New York. And now we see with Anthony Edwards with, taking that team and leading that team directly, of course, with, him and Rudy Gobert, their bench, that combination, oh, man, I think it's going to be absolutely incredible to watch how that's going to go down. Really, it's just going to we're really going to be able to see if Luka and LeBron can share the ball in this situation, because, Luka really seems to thrive in ISO type situations, even though he can still distribute the ball well. But this is going to be an opportunity for us to see if Ant-Man can actually lead a franchise, Can you tell how excited I am? A franchise through a full playoff run. So that's going to be interesting. Next up, we got Nuggets versus Clippers. Jokic is Jokic, man. Triple doubles, absolute elite IQ. I know they're without Jamal Murray last time I checked because of his injury. And so, if he comes back, that will be a factor. And then you've got Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, who right now are very healthy and very dangerous. You don't know what's going to happen with the level of tenacity and Jokic's just absolute maniacal ability to get a shot anywhere he wants, and to also his passing ability. I expect to see triple doubles in these games, but I really believe that in this matchup, if the Clippers get streaky, if the Clippers get hot, because they have streaky offense, if they get hot, it's a problem. But Denver's got home court advantage. And when you're going into a 7-game series stretch, that's going to matter. It's going to be so important. So we're going to be looking out for that. Moving forward right here, we have got the Mavs versus the Grizzlies. And what we've got going on over here with that, you've now got, Luka, of course, being traded away. They're now retooling in Dallas around Anthony Davis and Klay Thompson. So this is going to be very interesting. It all depends on if Anthony Davis is going to have a solid night. I love Anthony Davis's defensive ability, but sometimes he has one really, really good night, and then he has a night where he's kind of off. And depending on what Klay Thompson is going to bring, and last time I checked, I do believe that Kyrie is still out with an injury. It's going to be very, very important that they are clicking on every cylinder in that series. I mean, it's just going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough because that team without Kyrie is definitely missing some stuff. Where the Grizzlies are concerned, Ja Morant, like I said, with that injury, I'm very concerned about his ability to fully lead the charge with the team being injured. And, do you want to risk trying to make a deep playoff run with an injury like that? Or do you want to, have Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson lead the team directly and let Ja get more rest? So it's really going to depend on that. As I mentioned before, Anthony Davis's either health or his consistency is going to matter. And, Ja's health is going to be the most important thing. And then finally, and we'll talk about the East next time. But finally, I want to talk about the Warriors. We got Jimmy Butler on the squad. He brings that dog mentality. I love how he's been talking about Batman and Robin. That Steph is Batman and he is Robin. Obviously, right now, Draymond Green, if we can keep Draymond Green out of foul trouble, because I know that, Dylan Brooks is going to try to bait him into that. We know Ime Udoka is the coach of that team. They're going to try to get very physical. So the whole goal for us here is to make sure that, if Steph can, really be able to get some space, if they can find a way to balance that matchup between him and Amen Thompson and make sure that he does not lock Steph down, because of course Steph only got 3 points in that game when they played. If that can happen, and if the Warriors can really click on all cylinders, even if they can find a way to bring Jonathan Kuminga in, which he's not been playing as much lately, Steve Kerr's gotten some criticism for that. But Moses Moody's been going off, right? He's been doing his thing. So if we can have all of our guys on the Warriors, like shooting lights out or driving the ball in and using the full 24 seconds on the clock, please, because that's been my biggest complaint about the Warriors. Please use the 24 seconds on the clock. Have a man in the paint. We're already playing small ball. If we can do that, I think we can win this series out. It's going to be really experience versus just hunger. But you can't count the Rockets out. Jalen Green, depending on what he's going to bring, if he has great nights, they can go off. Şengün, we know he's going to get those offensive boards consistently like he did in that game against the Warriors. I think it was April 7th. And, Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, man, with that intensity. This is going to be a physical matchup in the series. And so I really believe that if the Warriors can, really blend the youth and experience in a 7-game series stretch, I believe they can win that. But once again, if you've got that youth in which the Rockets have and that energy, you never know what could really happen. And so for my playoff predictions right now, I'm just going to say for the record, I'm going to say first round in the West, Lakers are taking it versus the Timberwolves. I'm just going to give them the edge. I still think that the Nuggets are going to take it in their series. I believe that the Grizzlies, really I do believe the Grizzlies can pull it off against the Mavericks. I just think they've got a better stacked team, and they've been getting hot lately. And then I believe that, yes, I know I might come under, some people might get mad, they might say I'm biased, but I think the Warriors can pull this off. This is kind of reminding me of that 7-game series against the Kings when Steph dropped 50 in Game 7. We'll see what happens, though. What are your playoff predictions in the West? Who do you think is going to be able to do it? Let me know right now at _fullcirclepod on Instagram and at fullcirclepod on TikTok. Listen, that's all the time I have for today. We've gone from the courts to the court. Let me know what your thoughts are. Go ahead, subscribe to us, share this with a friend. Until next time, have a great one from your favorite brother. I'll see y'all next time. Peace. And go Warriors.